Hello, my name is Janelle Muganga. This is Agatha Humuza, Nagawa Daniela Kate, and Vivienne Makoha. Today we are representing Mt.St.Mary'S College Namagunga, and the resolution we'll be debating today is that this House believes that the recent executive appointments were to satisfy the President's political interests and not the interests of the citizens.
My name is Onen Henry and I'm from Team Namilyango College. So realize that in today's debate, our resolution is this House believes that the recent executive appointments were to satisfy the President's political interests and not the interests of the citizens. Well, today's debate we expect the best from our counterparts, Mt.St.Mary'S College Namagunga, and I'm going to introduce my teammates. With me here we have our first speaker for Team Roger Stephanie. We have Timaka Samuel and Okalebo Joel Caesar.
In today's debate, we expect to deliberate on matters of national importance and possibly present solutions to them. We expect this season to debate the octofinals, the semi-finals, and possibly the final. In general, we expect success from ourselves this season. Thank you.
House rules. Each speaker has 5 minutes. The first and last minutes are protected. The judge will ring a bell to signal the protected time. The bell will ring continuously after 5 minutes.
This House believes that the recent executive appointments were to satisfy the President's political interests and not the interests of the citizens. Team Negative will only take POIs in my 3rd minute. As a first, Affirmative will start by defining the key terms. According to Oxford 10th edition dictionary, recent is used to describe something that happened not so long ago. And in this case, we have considered recent as the early 2000s to date. In order to consider the President's last 4 terms, the appointments made in them in relation to the political interests, to his political interests and those of the citizens. If we considered recent as last week, we would not be able to notice trends that aren't based on predictions. Executive are the part of government responsible for policy and law implementation, including ministers, presidential advisors, the army. The president himself has the power to organize the executive according to Articles 113 and 114 of the Constitution. Appointment is the act of choosing someone for a job or position, and in this case, a position in the executive. To satisfy is to make someone pleased by doing or giving them what they want, whereas president is the lead of a republic, in this case the Republic of Uganda, our parameters today. Political is anything connected with state affairs, and interest is something that someone wants. Therefore, the president's political interests are to stay in power as head of state. A citizen is a person who has a legal right to belong to a particular country, and citizens' interests are socio-economic development. Our parameters are Uganda, and I'll justify this later in my speech. Our status quo states that appointments are made by His Excellency Yoweri Museveni under his power by the Constitution at the beginning and during his term of office. However, we notice a trend that mid-term appointments are usually 2 to 3 years to the next presidential elections. Towards 2006 elections, appointments were in 2003. Towards 2016 elections, appointments were in 2014. Towards 2021 elections, appointments in 2019. And now for 2026 elections, what's the probability that appointments have been made 2 years to 2026 in 2024? All this is to achieve his interests as a primary motive and not those of the citizens. This trend justifies our parameters as Uganda is the only country that has had the longest ruling president who exhibits such a trend so as to stay in rule. Our team case today is that the recent executive appointments from the early 2000s were made to achieve the president's political interests, excluding those of the citizens. The main intention of His Excellency in appointing them was to achieve his intentions, and those of the citizens were seen as a secondary achievement or not considered at all. Why do we believe this? How have the appointments satisfied his interests and not those of the citizens? Firstly, the appointments have maintained his political loyalty. In order to maintain political loyalty, we see that the president has kept rewarding people who have the ability to tarnish his name among voters and internationally. Soldiers of the Bush War who witnessed Museveni's war crimes and are able to testify against him in International Criminal Court, since the Bush War is one of his pending cases there, have been rewarded by being promoted to executive posts. For example, increased ranks in the army or given posts as ministers, in spite of their incompetence and corruption. And yet corruption is the biggest step back in achieving a citizen's interests. For example, General Salim Saleh, a Bush War veteran, was appointed Minister of State for Microfinance in 2006, and right now is serving as a presidential advisor. According to Daily Monitor of 3rd March 2003, this man was involved in a green bank corruption scandal of 2003, a major hindrance to service delivery, but for the sake of loyalty, he is still in our executive. Preemptively, dear panel, I would like to emphasize that the negators may come and claim that our executive appointments are not made only by the president, but also with approval from the Parliament. However, let's understand that the Appointments Committee of Parliament is greatly influenced by His Excellency in such a way that constantly it has at least 19 NRM members and at most 10 opposition members. Secondly, I would also like to make it, secondly, the negators may also come and claim that the citizens' interest could be bringing back the president into power. But I would like to emphasize that their actual interests are to achieve socio-economic development in this case, and that's why they would bring him back into power. Okay, thank you for listening.
The fundamental reason for leadership is service delivery. Decision-making is a huge imperative in the government of the citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, Otim Roger Stephen from Namilyango College. This House believes that the recent executive appointments were to satisfy the President's political interests and not the interests of the citizens. Panel, dear ladies and gentlemen, allow me to talk about the case presented by our affirmatives. They talked about the appointments of the past being presented in the status quo. I don't know the correlation to this. This has to be clarified by the subsequent speakers. They also talked about the NRM being the longest ruling body. I mean, how does this even relate to the citizens' major, most imperative interest of service delivery? They also came and talked about the appointments made in the early 2000s. Could they characterize how this fit into tonight's debate, since the motion states clearly that the recent executive appointments, also, they might have not understood so clearly what interest means. I'm going to pose this question. Do you want money or free health? Everyone is going to say money, but money is a want. But the interest is free health, because money gets you free health. But dear ladies and gentlemen, allow me to characterize our definitions of tonight's debate and what it depicts to paint a clear picture of what the motion really is meaning. The recent executive appointments are a premeditated cost-benefit analysis appointments that were made on the 22nd March 2024 by General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni that moved General Muhoozi Kainerugaba to the position of the Chief of Defense Forces, Mr. Balaam Barugahara to State Minister for Youth and Children's Affairs, Mr. General Mbasi Mbadi to State Minister for Trade, among many others. These moves have been premeditated cost-benefit. That clearly means that the legitimacy of the occupants of these particular offices have been proven before they have been allotted these particular duties. This is not a reward, it is a task. Now, the president's interest, by the way, revolve around maintaining power. This is the political interest of the president. Revolve around maintaining power, suppressing dissent, and controlling interest. That is how we characterize the president's interest. But in tonight's debate, these appointments are not supposed to satisfy this interest. They are to satisfy the interests of the citizens, which we characterized initially as service delivery. So, in Uganda currently, in the political avenue, it's quite clear the appointments are being made to serve the citizens. Now, the major problems that we tackle in tonight's debate are poor service delivery and less involvement of youth in the Ugandan political system, besides the programs that have always been presented by the government. You see, in the particular phenomenons of trade, mineral development, HAMI, and relief in Karamoja, there have been defaults, there have been flaws that the president thought it wise to make a reshufflement such that a correction is going to be made in service delivery and things get improved. In the youth sector, it is only 17.7% of the youth that are participating in government ventures, like the Skilling Uganda program, that is for technical skills, and the Youth Venture Capital Fund. But no one is talking about that's why he has brought people who are legitimate, like Balaam, who has been interacting with the youth. Now, giving him this political mileage is going to serve the youth much better. Fiona Nyamutoro is the state minister for mineral development, but she is also the youth MP. That clearly means she has influence among the youth. Now, my subsequent speakers are going to come and talk about mainly service delivery, but then they're going to highlight on the ability of these individuals that have been allotted these duties, as well as their influence on the youth, the incompetence of the removed leaders, since we talked about service delivery, and also how these people have been critics of the government, and appointing them clearly means that giving them this political incentive is going to improve service delivery in Uganda. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, we stand so firmly from a pragmatic perspective that the recent executive appointments were not to satisfy the president's political interests, but to serve the interests of the citizens, which have portrayed mainly as service delivery. Thank you.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.